When Karoline Leavitt took the stage for a routine interview on national television, no one expected the segment to end in controversy. The political strategist and outspoken conservative commentator had built a reputation for her strong views, but this particular exchange took an unexpected turn that sent shockwaves through the media world. It all started when Leavitt was invited onto a primetime news panel to discuss upcoming elections and the state of political discourse in America. Seated across from her was a well-known liberal TV host, someone with years of experience navigating heated debates. The conversation began as any other, with both sides presenting their perspectives. However, tensions quickly escalated when Leavitt made a sharp critique of mainstream media bias, accusing networks of intentionally distorting conservative viewpoints. The host, clearly rattled, attempted to push back. "That's simply not true," they asserted, attempting to steer the conversation in another direction. But Leavitt wasn't backing down. She doubled down, citing examples of media narratives that, in her view, deliberately misrepresented conservative leaders and policies. As the discussion grew more intense, voices were raised and interruptions became frequent. Then, in a moment that stunned viewers, the liberal host lost their composure entirely. Frustrated and seemingly unable to counter Leavitt's arguments, effectively, they launched into an impassioned monologue that quickly turned personal. They accused Leavitt of spreading misinformation and even made a remark suggesting that certain conservative viewpoints shouldn't have a platform at all. The Sektorzeit outburst was immediate fodder for social media. Clips of the segment spread like wildfire, with many conservatives calling it proof of media bias, while liberals attempted to defend the host's reaction as justified. However, the backlash was swift and severe. Executives at the network, facing mounting pressure from viewers and advertisers, released a statement distancing themselves from the host's remarks. By the next morning, reports surfaced that the host had been suspended indefinitely. Then, just hours later, an official announcement confirmed their termination. The decision to fire the host ignited an even larger debate. Supporters of Leavitt praised the network's move, claiming it was a rare acknowledgement of media bias against conservatives. Others, however, viewed it as a dangerous precedent, arguing that a single heated exchange shouldn't cost someone their career. Leavitt herself took to social media, addressing the incident with a measured response. "Passionate debate is necessary," she wrote, "but silencing one side only proves the point we've been making all along." Her statement garnered millions of views, with comments flooding in from both sides of the political spectrum. Meanwhile, former colleagues of the fired host came to their defense. Some claimed that the decision was reactionary, while others admitted that the host's comments were unprofessional. Behind the scenes, reports indicated that network executives had been growing concerned about their on-air personalities' increasingly combative style for months. Media analysts weighed in on what the firing meant for political discourse in the industry. Some argued that it signaled a shift in how networks handle partisan debates, while others worried it could have a chilling effect on journalists who fear losing their jobs over a single heated moment. One undeniable fact remained. The controversy had propelled Karoline Leavitt further into the national spotlight. In the days following the incident, her social media following skyrocketed, and she was invited onto several major conservative platforms to discuss the ordeal. Some speculated that this moment could even serve as a launch pad for a future political career. As the dust settled, one question lingered. Was this incident a rare case of accountability, or was it proof of a growing divide in how different viewpoints are treated in mainstream media? Regardless of where people stood, one thing was clear. The debate ignited by Karoline Leavitt wasn't going away anytime soon. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of the controversy spread beyond just one network. Other media outlets quickly weighed in, with some defending the fired host as a victim of political pressure, while others suggested their removal was long overdue. Conservative commentators pointed out the irony of a liberal journalist facing consequences for behavior they had previously criticized in others. Meanwhile, progressive voices decried what they saw as an overreaction, with some suggesting the firing was an attempt to appease a vocal conservative audience. Karoline Leavitt, now at the center of this media firestorm, remained largely composed. She continued making appearances on conservative platforms, reinforcing her message about media bias and the need for open debate. Many of her supporters saw this as a defining moment, proof that conservative voices were often unfairly dismissed until undeniable moments like this forced the issue into the mainstream. However, the former host's defenders were not staying silent either. Petitions began circulating online demanding their reinstatement, arguing that heated moments were part of live television and that punishing a journalist for expressing frustration was a slippery slope. Some prominent figures in the media industry echoed this sentiment, warning that networks cracking down on emotional responses could have unintended consequences for press freedom. At the same time, some viewers took a different stance. They argued that the host's comments went beyond frustration, instead reflecting a growing intolerance for conservative perspectives in major media spaces. This argument gained traction when archived clips of the host surfaced, showing past interviews where they had aggressively challenged or dismissed conservative guests. Critics claimed this pattern demonstrated a broader issue with media gatekeeping, where certain perspectives were treated as illegitimate rather than debated on their merits. The network itself remained in damage control mode, attempting to strike a balance between addressing public backlash and maintaining credibility. Behind the scenes, sources revealed that executives were divided. Some believed firing the host was necessary to maintain journalistic integrity, while others worried about alienating their core audience. Advertisers, always a major factor in these decisions, reportedly played a role in the swift action taken. Amid all this, other journalists began reflecting on the larger implications of the controversy. If one heated exchange could cost someone their job, would this lead to more self-censorship in political discussions? Would networks become more hesitant to host confrontational debates, fearing backlash from either side? And most importantly, was this a sign of a broader shift in how media outlets handled ideological clashes? For Karoline Leavitt, the controversy was undeniably a career-defining moment. Her ability to remain calm under pressure only reinforced her growing reputation as a strong conservative voice. Offers for speaking engagements and interviews poured in, with some speculating that she might even take on a larger role in the political sphere. As for the fired host, their future remained uncertain. While some believed they would find a new platform, perhaps in an independent media space, others speculated that the controversy might make mainstream networks hesitant to bring them on. Whether they would publicly address the incident in the coming weeks was still unknown. In the end, this explosive moment on live television became more than just a viral clip. It became a case study in the ever-changing media landscape. It exposed deep divisions in how different viewpoints are treated, raised concerns about the consequences of on-air confrontations, and sparked a larger discussion about the future of political debate in the news industry. One thing was certain: the debate surrounding Karoline Leavitt and the fired host would not be forgotten anytime soon. And as the media world continued to react, it was clear that this was just one chapter in a much larger conversation about free speech, media responsibility, and the role of journalists in shaping public discourse. As the controversy continued to dominate headlines, discussions about the implications of the incident extended far beyond just political and media circles. Everyday viewers, journalists, political analysts, and even lawmakers weighed in on what this moment signified in the larger cultural and ideological battle playing out across the country. Some saw the firing as an overdue correction, a moment of accountability for a media figure who had crossed the line from passionate debate into outright hostility. Others, however, warned that this could set a dangerous precedent where networks respond too quickly to public outrage, potentially stifling free speech and discouraging difficult conversations. One of the most striking aspects of the fallout was the way it energized both conservatives and liberals. Conservative commentators framed it as a victory, proof that the mainstream media was finally facing consequences for long-standing bias. They pointed to past instances where conservative voices had been shut down, deplatformed, or unfairly labeled as extreme, while liberal figures faced little to no repercussions for their words. On the other hand, progressive commentators argued that the host's firing reflected a growing pressure on journalists to conform to certain expectations, especially when engaging with conservative figures. Some worried that this would discourage media personalities from challenging guests aggressively, fearing they could lose their jobs for stepping too far. This raised questions about whether networks were prioritizing neutrality or simply reacting to political pressure. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt's growing prominence in the wake of the controversy did not go unnoticed. While she had already been a rising star in conservative circles, this incident propelled her into an even bigger spotlight. Some supporters speculated that she could leverage this moment into a political career, perhaps running for office or taking on a more formal role in media advocacy. Interestingly, the controversy also sparked renewed discussions about journalistic ethics and the evolving role of political commentators on television. In an age where debates often become viral moments rather than substantive discussions, some media critics suggested that the industry had created an environment where these kinds of explosive clashes were inevitable. Major networks took notice, with some reportedly reviewing their own policies on how hosts should engage with political guests. Some executives feared that overly harsh responses to political figures, whether conservative or liberal, could lead to similar backlash in the future. Others worried that a chilling effect could emerge, where hosts become too afraid to ask tough questions, leading to watered-down discussions that fail to challenge powerful voices effectively. In the background, legal experts debated whether the fired host had any grounds for legal action. Some suggested that depending on their contract and the circumstances of their dismissal, they could pursue wrongful termination claims. However, others pointed out that media contracts often include clauses allowing networks to dismiss talent if they believe their behavior damages the brand. As days turned into weeks, the conversation surrounding the incident began shifting toward broader issues. Was this a one-time event, or was it a sign of a larger trend where media figures would increasingly face consequences for their on-air behavior? Would networks become more cautious about hosting fiery debates, or would this lead to a renewed focus on civil discourse? One thing was certain. This controversy had exposed deep fault lines not just within the media industry, but within the country itself. For some, it was a moment of long overdue reckoning. For others, it was an example of political overreach and a suppression of open debate. Karoline Leavitt, for her part, continued to embrace her role as a central figure in the conversation. She remained active on social media, engaging with supporters and critics alike, while also making strategic appearances on conservative platforms to reinforce her message. As for the fired host, their future remained uncertain. While some believed they could make a comeback, perhaps on an independent media platform or through a podcast, others speculated that this moment could permanently damage their credibility. Would another network take a chance on them, or had this incident marked the end of their mainstream career?